Welcome to the 2018 season of X's and Omar. I am Omar Kelly, the person the show is named after, and this is not Matt Lincoln.
And I don't have the show named after me either.
This is Dave Hyde. He is the Sentinel columnist, our lead columnist here at the paper, and he is now the new co-host of X's and Omar. Welcome, Dave. Welcome to the humble abode.
Matt Lincoln got promoted, and I took his seat. I hope I get promoted at some point, too.
See, now hopefully we'll be able to continue this streak for a couple more years. Me and Matt Lincoln, we had a 4-year run, Dave. 4-year run.
4-year, wow, that's a longer cycle than most Dolphin regimes. So
that is an excellent point. Speaking about Dolphins regimes, this is episode 1 of season, I don't even know how many, in X's and Omars, but the constant cycle of new regime, new coach, usually new quarterback. This time we kept it the same with Ryan Tannehill, and they've gone through. They're entering their 3rd season. This is the 3rd season where in the same offense, they're in the same defense. Some coaches have changed, but this is supposed to be the time where there's payday. How close do you think they are to being a good team?
About the same distance they were when these guys came in. You know, I don't see the talent level any higher on this team than it was 3 years ago. In fact, you could argue it could be lower without a star like Ndamukong Suh. Okay, so what do you think, Omar? Do you think they got a winning season in them this year?
I don't, but I think the issues that they are going to have a winning season aren't things that are controllable. The talent level on this team, while it once was controllable, it isn't. Just because a lot of moves that they made this offseason, which made them a deeper team, not necessarily a more talented team. And when you do things like that, when you get rid of the Ndamukong Suhs of the world, it creates some concern about the direction your franchise is headed. Well, Adam Gase is confident, and he's convicted on the fact that we will take a step in the right direction because we're changing the culture of the organization. We're changing the culture of the team. And the question is, who's right and who's wrong? Does talent win or does culture win? We shall soon find out in 2018.
All right, Omar, let's go back to preseason. Impressions of preseason. Good, bad, indifferent. Who stood out?
To me, Kenyon Drake. I mean, we saw him tease us at the end of the season last year, starting 5 games, leading the NFL in rushing yards, even though they were the team that ran the ball the least. He has shown that he's got a talent, he's got the upside, he's got the potential to be a difference maker. The question is, can he stay healthy, and will he address all these maturity concerns that this coaching staff has had about him for his first 2 years of his career? Then you get to young guys like, Mike Gesicki, tons of talent, and will he deliver in terms of being the red zone talent that he has a potential to be? Kenny Stills, starting wide receiver, compared him to Jimmy Graham, who he played with in New Orleans. The question is, can he be impactful? I watched him in one practice destroy the defense in a red zone drill, and I saw the defensive players. I was on the sidelines with them when they were talking about, man, you think he can get to 70 receptions? Oh, no, I don't know about that, but I think he can lead the league in touchdowns. Defensive players are having these conversations. Talking about how many touchdowns do you think that he can get this year amongst themselves? So if they're excited about it, why shouldn't I be?
See, my concern, though, I come out of the preseason with more questions. Cornerback. That really, they're on plan C of their cornerback position, which really scares me a little.
Is it plan C or plan D?
Their defensive tackles didn't show an ability to stop the run, and what's Tennessee, a running team, or some power to them anyway. So those are my questions. Okay, Omar, any cuts surprise you?
Oh, absolutely. Maurice Smith, the safety for the Dolphins linebacker. I did an ASF giving my offseason superlatives, my honors, most improved, top MVP, most irreplaceable guy. And the guy who I named initially my most improved player was Maurice Smith. This is a guy who made the 53-man roster as an undrafted rookie after transferring from Alabama to Georgia. And he showed you that he has some talent, some ability, and they kept him on the initial 53 and then cut him to re-sign Sam Young, who they've always cut. Sam Young's the guy. They know that he's not going anywhere. We cut him Tuesday. We can sign him on Thursday.
And to keep 4 quarterbacks. And out of that 4, do they have a backup? That's my question. Do they have a backup out of the 4 quarterbacks?
They do. Brock Osweiler's shown you. He started 25 games. See, hey, that's a lot of experience.
Do you want him? Nobody else wanted him.
Brock Osweiler or Chad Henne?
I don't know. I don't know.
Chad Haney's somebody's backup.
Well,
I believe he's the backup in Kansas City.
You got 3 backups, but do you have a backup?
You have 3 backups.
You got a lot of.
You got 4 quarterbacks. Do you have a quarterback?
You have a lot of something.
You got 4 quarterbacks. Do you have a quarterback?
Let's see. At least they're invested into Tannehill, right? We'll see. We'll see if they're right. Okay. What about Tony Lippett?
Tony Lippett is a guy where I thought he'd be competing for the starting spot. So you go from being the competitor for the starting spot in day 1 where you pull down an interception. I'm like, oh, Lippett's back. And it just went downhill from there. And he unfortunately, he suffered an ankle injury, and I don't think he was ever the same. He wasn't playing well before the ankle injury, but once the ankle injury hit, it just became apparent to the Dolphins that, hey, it might be time to move on. We're not saying that Tony Lippett can't come back when he's fully recovered and fully healthy, but right now we don't see what we need.
Also playing a contract. He's on the last year of his rookie contract. He's a free agent at the end of the year. How much do you, if his Achilles was still bothering, how much do you allow him to rehabilitate when he's not going to be back next year? So, all right.
It's a tough story of the NFL, but it happens to everybody.
You want to go to questions, Omar?
Absolutely.
First chapter of questions this year. Our first question comes from Doug. What aspect of the Dolphins has your opinion changed the most since training camp began?
It would have to be the receivers. They started what I felt was a deep unit. I mean, you've got guys who I thought 6 of them had the talent to be on a 53-man roster. We get 2 injuries, and all of a sudden, Albert Wilson, a career backup in Kansas City, is your starting wide receiver. A lot of talent, a lot of ability, but hasn't really refined it. Paid him $8 million. Let's see if he can refine it. Danny Amendola and Kenny Stills. Very effective, efficient receivers for what they do. Now, the question is, can you be efficient? And will that be sexy enough? Will that be productive enough? I don't know. I also changed my opinion on Mike Gesicki. I thought Mike Gesicki would never get the blocking down. I mean, I know he's super talented as an athlete and wide receiver. He's got those volleyball skills that allow him to high point the ball. But he was a liability run blocking and pass blocking. Now I can say with conviction, he is only a reliability in pass blocking. Run blocking, he might be able to hold his own.
If they use him as a blocker, that's not the idea.
To do his real job?
His real job is
to be a tight end?
Is to be a receiver like Jimmy Graham, like Greg Olsen. Go out, get the ball. That's why they drafted him, right?
Receivers play important role in 3 facets: catching passes, run blocking, pass blocking. All 3 phases of the game for the offense. So it's an important position.
Okay, question 2. John wants to know, will the Dolphins emphasize longer passes of 15-plus yards this year?
I think it's, when we saw the offense with Ryan Tannehill back in 2016, it was check down slot, pass interference. I mean, not pass interference, but offsides, check down slot, and then they hit you big. Kenny Stills 9 touchdowns in 2016. He's shown you that he has the talent and ability and the capabilities of being a big play producer. And Ryan Tannehill, one of my major concerns about him early in his career was that he couldn't hit the deep ball. We had that question and that concern with Mike Wallace. That whole Mike Wallace era was a waste because they couldn't connect on the deep ball. Well, Kenny Stills gets here. Ryan Tannehill doesn't have any deep ball issues anymore. Hell, he's throwing deep balls to Kenyon Drake. So that I give him his props for. So I do believe that they're going to be a better deep ball team.
And I'll say, in preseason, they didn't throw the ball deep much at all. But if you go to practice, they're throwing downfield a lot. So I think that will be something that, look, Adam Gase loves to stretch the field.
Absolutely.
And they have an offensive line. For one of the few times I can go into a season saying they have a decent offensive line, okay? And so they should be able to give him time. Okay, question 3, Omar. This one comes from Tom, who says, fill in the blank. Steve Ross cleans house, Tannenbaum, Greer, and Gaze. If the Dolphins fail, they do what?
I think Steve Ross, the owner of the Dolphins for the last decade, which coincides with how long I've been here covering this team, I think if they produce a losing record, if they repeat as a 6-10 team for the 2nd straight year, I believe his frustration level will allow him to say, hey, I might need to finally do what I've never done before, which is press the entire reset button. Executive vice president, GM, and coach, and start fresh with somebody who will hire all 3. But then again, who's out there? Who is that sexy name? I can only give you
Jim
one
Harbaugh?
name. Oh, Jim Harbaugh's out there. I could give you even a better sexy name. Peyton Manning. Think about it. Peyton Manning wants to get in ownership. He wants to join a franchise.
He turned down Steve Ross once about joining the team.
Hey,
remember?
that was about joining the team. Now you're talking about an equity owner.
Okay, we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here.
Okay. Season week one. Week one is not the time to talk about that. Right? We'll save that for
Let's
week
march
10.
into the season with a little optimism and be on fire and everybody and starting all over, right? Okay, so now we go on. Omar, first time. See, I'm learning my way through X's and Omar here, so it's pretty good. Let's go. Plenty of moves were made this offseason that made the Dolphins roster full of older and younger players. A lot was made about the changing of the culture. What does that mean to you?
I thought you wrote an excellent column in the Sun Sentinel last week where you basically said that the genesis of this team is a team that's asking older players to play younger than they are, referring to the 30-somethings of the team, and then younger players to play older than they are, referring to the Mike Gesicki's and Minka Fitzpatrick and the Jerome Bakers and the second-year guys. And I thought, you know what? That's brilliantly put. And probably will be the dichotomy of where things go wrong with this team. Because, yeah, the older guys can hold you up for the first half of the season. But then when you get into November, December games, their bodies start to fall apart. They get a little nick, and it takes them a while to get back from it. And then the younger players, they generally play like poo for the first 8 games of the season. Then they're like, oh, get my legs under me. I'm looking good week 8 to 13. And then
they hit the wall.
And then they hit the rookie wall.
Look, sports exposes age. If you're too young, you're going to be exposed. If you're too old, you're going to be exposed. And the Dolphins are trying to thread a needle here and try to get everything to work out perfectly. Maybe it does. Rarely does it, though, and we'll see how this plays out. All right.
Here's my question to you. Are you buying the aged veterans, the Danny Amendolas, the Josh Sittons, the Frank Gore, the Cam Wakes, the William Hayes, the Rashad Jones? Are you buying the 30-year-olds?
I think you have to take them on an individual basis. Because am I buying Cam Wake? Yeah, we've seen him play. He's been healthy. He's, for the most part.
Before we started this show, we were talking about 4 possible Pro Bowlers,
Well,
and I named 4 on defense.
That's a whole different argument. Is he a Pro Bowl player at age 36? Now, is he a productive player, pass rusher? Yeah. I'm not about to put him in the top 4 AFC pass
So you're
rushers.
saying Cam Wake at 36 cannot be a Pro Bowl player?
I'm saying I'm not predicting him to be a Pro. Can he? In the best of all worlds, yes. But how many 36-year-old defensive ends are Pro Bowl players? Very few, right?
Yeah.
He'd be an outlier. So
he's been an outlier his whole career, his whole life.
Well, he won when he was a 30-year-old pass rusher. Okay, all right. But your point's taken. Okay, now, as far as like Danny Amendola, history of injuries, Bill Belichick never played him more than half the plays in New England. And yet, as near as I can tell, he's going to be on the field all the time with the Dolphins. More than 50% of the plays. Okay, so him getting through a full season, I'm not sure. William Hayes, he's been hurt a lot. To bank on him.
Lately, they fixed the back. He's better
He
now.
missed the last 6-7 games last year, missed preseason. That's what happens to 33-year-olds, right? So, you have to take it, to me, a case-by-case basis on the older players.
One thing I will say is I'm encouraged by what I've seen from Josh Sitton. He gets an old man practice day.
I was going to say, there he goes.
He's on the Mike Pouncey program where he sits out a tough practice day. And
you need to see, okay, week 8, where is he? If they're putting him on a maintenance program now, right?
Frank Gore looks amazing. I'm just, they'll tell you, hey, Frank Gore had a career high in yards after contact last season, and they'll say, hey, that's proof he's going to be able to grind it. And now we're not even making him be the workhorse back. We're just using him in a featured role. How could Frank possibly not contribute well for that?
Well, I mean, if you want to ask how can he not, he's 35. He had career low yardage in a bad Indianapolis team, a bad line, granted, but that would be how. I mean, age has to factor into this.
Our next question comes from Paul B. Besides quarterbacks and injuries, at what position would be detrimental because of depth? One position, injuries can detriment the unit.
Well, linebackers is the obvious one, right? I mean, they got 2 rookies starting.
Never played it down.
Never played it down. And really, when Raekwon McMillan came in last year, second-round draft pick, blew out his knee in the first preseason play for him, he was going to be a two-down linebacker. He was going to be the run stopper. And now he's three downs. And did he pick up speed? Did he pick up talent? Or are they so thin that I want to see this play out?
Hey, and that's the one with less questions. What about Jerome Baker? 220-something pounds. Yeah, he led the team in preseason. You know, he's an athletic guy who works his way to make tackles, but whoa, where's the,
Week one, Omar.
The run?
Week one, Omar. Derrick Henry, Tennessee's running back, 6'3", 247. He's bigger than any linebacker. Now McMillan's 248, but he's 6'2", so you could say it's matched. But they're going to have Tennessee's going to try to go at him, I would imagine. Okay, so what about you? What position? Besides linebacker.
Besides linebacker, I'm uncomfortable a little bit with the defensive tackle situation. Akeem Spence, a guy that the Lions just haven't. Jordan Phillips, question mark his entire life.
Oh, I see a tweet coming.
In terms of work ethic, high school, college, NFL, everybody's like, man, the talent's there. And the talent is there. He could give you 15 to maybe 17, borderline elite snaps. Those plays where he gives you the interception and then you see him running downfield. It's there.
You see a lot of the questions when they drafted players with questions. Devante Parker injury, Jordan Phillips motor. A lot of times there's some relevance to them as they get into their careers.
Some relevance, yeah.
That would be nice. All right, Omar, let's go to, do you expect the Dolphins to play more 5-2 on rundowns to fix the leaky run defense and 4-2-6 on passing downs? Well, this is a real technical question, Omar.
It is a technical question. He's asking for a five-man front, which would probably feature the inclusion of William Hayes. Until I saw that question, I had never thought about it. And you know what? That would be brilliant against Tennessee. It actually might work. And in fact, they might have done it last year. I'd have to look at the film, but they're going to need to own the line of scrimmage against a very physical back. That would be a great strategy. And then in terms of the 4-2-6, he's talking about a quarter system, which basically means 3 starting safeties, which are already on the field anyway, and 3 cornerbacks.
4-2-6 is 12 players.
I
mean, that might cause some problems there with the referees. But the point being, walk up one of the safeties, right? Make him a fourth linebacker.
3 safeties, 3 cornerbacks, and then 1 linebacker and 4 down linemen.
All right, question number 6 comes from Alex. Do you think this is Devante Parker last season in Miami? He's due nearly $9.4 million in 2019 as his 5th-year option.
Now, here's the important part about 5th-year options. This is where I want you to put your Mike Tannenbaum GM hat on, okay? 5th-year options, 9.4. Not bad, not cheap. Not bad, not cheap. It's in the Jawan James status of contracts, where he's the 3rd highest paid right tackle in the NFL. Okay. As Mike Tannenbaum, are you going to say, Devante Parker, I'm going to give you this $9.4 million, but I'll wait till next year to see whether or not I want to honor it, because 5th-year options are not guaranteed.
This is what teams always do, right? I mean, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. You need to see Devante Parker do something this year, right? And if he doesn't, it's an easy decision, right? Yeah. After all this time where you're saying, oh, maybe this is a year, maybe this is a year, he's not going to get there.
What's interesting, Baltimore Ravens, who are an organization I have the highest respect. If you ask me to rank my front offices in the NFL, the Baltimore Ravens would be number 1. They selected Brashad Perriman in the exact same draft the Miami Dolphins selected Devante Parker. You know that the Dolphins were very high on Perriman.
Right.
And the Baltimore Ravens, they just cut Perriman. They said, you know what? We're done with this investment. We're moving on. We'd like to do something. We'd like to pour all our efforts and energies into other players. Too injury, too inconsistent. And I ask you, what's different between Brashad Perriman and Devante Parker?
What's the difference between Carew, who they kept on the practice squad? If you're done with the guy, be done with him. And let's go. All right, Omar, we go into the 3rd segment now. You ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Miami's stretch of the season features 3 very physical teams. Tennessee Titans kick it off. They made the playoff last season, but still changed head coaches. So, former Patriots linebacker Mike Vrabel, who worked his way up the coaching ranks in Houston, takes over for Mike Mularkey. How much of an advantage is it that there's no film on what he wants to run outside of preseason?
Well, same advantage that Adam Gase had early in the season in 2016, which didn't really benefit him because he started the season 1-4, changed the team's offensive identity, and then they took off. I think that whole mystery of my offense, mystery of my defense is overstated. You're either running or you're passing. And if you're running, you either have 2 tight ends or 3 receivers on the field. And if you do that, you're either, you call an audible, you're probably going to a slant or a quick hitch. It ain't that complicated. People play each other all the time. And even if you can know Bill Belichick's offense for the last 14 years. It's not going to make you stop them, not going to help you stop them. They've been running the same offense for 14 years.
Just like Vrabel played the Dolphins, is that any benefit really to him? Maybe he knows the question of them, to me, physicality. How physical are the Dolphins going to be this year?
Absolutely.
And you know Mike Vrabel, the way he played, the way he wants his team to
exactly.
play. And the Tennessee
and
strength.
What he inherited.
Yes, Tennessee's strength is physicality. So we'll see how that plays out.
What I do find interesting is that, Vrabel comes from an organization that runs a 3-4 scheme and is physical, he's from that Parcells blueprint. It's still the same blueprint that this organization used to be part of. Now, can that old school football come back? Because I do believe in physical, hardcore, on the line of scrimmage football. You don't?
No, I do believe in that, but I also believe that you got to have the quick strike offense in this era. And I don't know, Tennessee doesn't have it from what I've seen. They don't have the receivers. They don't have the quarterback who's shown it. Mariota took a step back last year, 13 touchdowns, 15 interceptions. So, as much as the Dolphins have questions, Tennessee, for making the playoffs, has a lot of questions, too.
Oh, definitely. But from a defensive standpoint, with guys like Jarrell Casey and Brian Orakpo and I believe Derek Morgan, they should have what it takes to give Miami challenges. Guys on the edges who can rush. Their secondary is a little bit, especially without Jonathan Sipper and the FIU linebacker who suffered a season-ending injury in training camp. So it'll be interesting to see how they evolve as a team. But much like in 2016, you really don't know what you have. Hell, Adam Gase is 3 years in, and I asked him last week. He said, I really don't know what I have.
They change it every year. He's been here. Okay, can they match the physicality of Tennessee?
My answer is no, but the only reason I give that answer is because I have not seen William Hayes play. And William Hayes, I thought he was one of their better players, the best run stopper on the team. Reminded me a lot of Randy Starks when he was healthy last season. And they completely changed and became a different defense when he wasn't healthy last season. So I'm going to put some respect on his name and say I will evaluate and judge this Dolphins defense when I see William Hayes in it.
All right, Omar, final question. How should the Dolphins try to contain a mobile quarterback in Marcus Mariota?
Whew, that's been giving Dolphins coaches, I'm on like my 4th Dolphins coach that problem's giving them issues. Here's something that I always find very interesting when I talk to defensive players, and not for stories or on the record, but just have conversations. Defensive players, you know who they fear in the NFL? They fear the athletic mobile quarterback. Like that, outside of the Tom Brady's, Drew Brees's, the elites of the league.
Don't get me started on Lamar Jackson. Draft. Okay, don't get me started.
Hey, you can.
Make me go there, Omar.
I respect mobile quarterbacks. I'm not buying it as much as you are. I want my pocket quarterback. One of the reasons I didn't like RG3 in the whole draft process in 2012, when people were like, oh, Dolphins should trade up for RG3, and I was like, nah, he's not going to be the same quarterback after he gets hurt. His injury is going to have to make him recalibrate his entire game. Now, he's done that. It's taken him 4 years.
All right, so Mariota, what do you do to him?
I think you have to have a linebacker shadow him. To me, it's going to be Jerome Baker just because he's got the best athleticism. But that's going to force actually, Jerome Baker can't even be on the field during nickel packages, so it's got to be Kiko Alonso. And does that make me feel comfortable? I don't know. Actually, you know what? It might have to be Raekwon McMillan because if Kiko can't cover the tight end.
Can Raekwon?
Exactly.
I mean, that's why you have Baker. That's why you drafted Baker, to cover the tight end.
So that
in
means
part.
Baker's going to have to be in your
Now,
nickel
the
package?
question is he ready? With a lot of the rookies, that's really it isn't a question of talent. It's a question of how much. Look, you got Fitzpatrick, who's shown he's going to be great. Okay, in my estimation, he'll have the biggest impact of a rookie since Jake Long for the Dolphins. But you got Baker, you got McMillan out there. He hadn't played it down. How many of those guys can you have playing at the same time in the first game?
That gets into the age issue, and also gets into, speaking about defense, our final question, which actually comes from Justin Drunker. Does Matt Burke have enough talent to work with this season?
Yeah, he has enough talent. Now, they went out and they got the exact recipe of players they wanted after last season. Last season, their off season was spent on saying, how do we stop the 3 receiver formations? Okay.
And how do we create tight end formation?
And how do we cover the tight end? Yeah, okay. The things that hurt them. Those are the things that hurt them. So they went out and they drafted a versatile guy in the secondary, Minkah Fitzpatrick. They got a good mobile linebacker in Baker. All right, and so they covered that. Now, if you're a team like the Patriots and you can pass or run, you say, okay, you're going to play that way. We're going to run it right up the gut. And can you stop that?
Brilliant.
And so that's really the question. The question's flipped a little on the Dolphins.
Yeah. You try to strengthen one area, another area becomes weaker. Teams say, hey, they're not good. They've never been good stopping the run. Let's just run it right at them. And it'll be interesting to see how they match and counter that. Now, in terms of Matt Burke, I can't sit here and make an excuse for him because he's got 4 of the top 5 players on this team, talent-wise. When you have 4 of the top 5, I don't care what the rest of your unit looks like. We make that argument. I think there's 4 potential Pro Bowlers on this team, starting with Xavier Howard, who looks like he's ready to take that next step. If injuries aside, he should be a Pro Bowl caliber player. You saw 4 interceptions last year at the end of the season when he was like, hey, I no longer feel like a rookie. Let me jump balls. And then you've got Cam Wake, who, I'll say this because Cam is always watching. Cam is always paying attention.
I love Cam.
Cam is always looking for motivation. If you say Cam is too old, Cam will be like, okay, I'm too old. And he'll walk and spend his time on earth this day. They think I'm too old. I'm going to prove to them I'm not too old. Just like he proved to you he can come back from the Achilles injury. So I never count out Cam. So Cam is always going to be viewed in my mind as a Pro Bowl player until he retires, hopefully as a Dolphin. They didn't decide to give him an extension to his contract, which is something that they've done for the last 2 seasons.
They got invested in 5 defensive ends, Omar. 5! This isn't such a pitching staff. No, you don't need 5 defensive ends. That's the problem. Okay, to me.
So you're going to get rid of Wake?
No, but when you say, okay, this defense this year, yes, they have obvious talent, but they have obvious weaknesses too. And if you're Matt Burke, how do you cover for a cornerback on the other side? Bobby McCain, I love as a slot cornerback, as a boundary cornerback. They're going to attack him because he's small. They're going to put a 6'3" receiver, 6'4" receiver.
Bobby's all right with that.
We'll see.
He'll make a lot of tackles.
We'll see what happens. I agree. I love Bobby McCain, but everybody has a role.
Yeah, and he's just a nickel until they didn't realize they didn't have a quarterback. Now it'll be interesting to see how. But you got Wake, Quinn, Jones, Howard. That's 4 guys with the potential to be Pro Bowl players. So you have no excuse about what you can and can't do on defense. You got two sets of defensive ends. Now the question is, can you pass rush? If your team can get you a lead and put yourself in position to pass rush, you might have a chance.
I like this liquid we're getting on the X's and Omar studio here. All right, final segment.
All right.
Are we ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's already on the Sun Sentinel website. If you haven't seen it, we have the Sun Sentinel staff predictions.
You better remember what you wrote there.
Oh, I remember what I wrote down.
All right. How do you predict the 2018 season will turn out for the Dolphins and why?
I'm going 8-8. And here's my reasoning for going 8-8.
Even Steven.
It's like so many things could go right, so many things could go wrong. And if you think about Ryan Tannehill throughout the arc of his career, he's only produced one season where it's 6-10. So he's usually in the 7-9, 8-8 realm. And I really think he's shown enough improvement for me to say, hey, all right, you're going to get him to 500 this season.
Going to get him to 500. It's like, that's an achievement. That's an achievement. Look, the Dolphins are the only team in the league in the last decade to oscillate between 6 wins and 10 wins. So anything in there is possible, right? If everything goes perfectly, perfect.
Hey, 10 wins, 10 and
Perfect.
above, 10 and above only happened twice this decade. So don't
Perfect.
act like it happened a lot.
Perfect. And if everything goes awful, there was 6 wins. I'm going 7-9.
All right.
Just because they have a lot of everybody's average on their offense, except you could argue Kenyon Drake, okay, and Tannehill at times, okay. But how do you get a team full of average players to play above average?
Adam Gase will tell you.
It's
Culture.
X's and Omar, X's and O's. He's good at play calling. I agree. Culture. You buying into culture, Omar?
I am not buying into culture.
I buy into talent.
I buy into talent
Culture
as well.
should be a given. It should be a given.
I didn't have a problem with Mike Pouncey's culture that he brought. And, you know, even though Jarvis Landry was a hothead, and I acknowledge that he was a hothead, he didn't have a problem having him be your alpha male for the past 4 years. All of a sudden, oh, he's a culture problem. He's the reason why we never produced a winner. What? Wasn't he like the catalyst when you were 10-6 and in playoffs and nobody believed in you? Who was your catalyst? It was Jarvis. Now he's a culture problem.
All right, this week, what happens?
I think I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans producing a 21-17 victory over Miami. I just don't believe that the Dolphins will have the physicality that they need to match up with. There are certain teams this team is not built for. This is a finesse team in my mind, and until they get rid of that reputation and establish themselves as a powerful football team, a physical football team, I'm going to have to give the edge to the physical football
I'm
team.
going to go the exact reverse, just because I want to go into a season with optimism. And Tennessee's nothing special. If the Dolphins
Went to the playoffs last year. I'm just saying.
If the Dolphins have any shot this year, it's these first 3 games. They should win each of these first 3 games. Tennessee at home, Jets on the road with Sam Darnold starting out, and then Oakland, which I don't even know what kind of team's going to show up here.
Old school football.
Old school, okay. So Tennessee for me, Dolphins 21-17.
All right. For X's and Omar, this has been Omar Kelly and Dave Hyde. See you next week.